Hello, everybody, and welcome to this webinar about the gaming using Harmony for creating gaming assets and the middleware in Unity that we've created. I'll be your host. My name is Marc-André, or Marc-André. I'm the product manager here at Toon Boom Animation, and I have here Frédéric Bouchard, which is the gaming specialist that will be moderating and telling me all the questions as this webinar goes on. Usually what we do is we reserve the questions for the end of the webinar. So I'll make a presentation about 30, 45 minutes. And after that, Fred will be reading the questions and we will be answering all the ones that we have time for. This webinar is being recorded, so it will be available on our website in the webinar section. We will put this probably a couple of hours after this webinar ends. All right, so for those of you that are not familiar with Harmony, Harmony is a 2D animation software. It's used to create TV shows, feature films, even gaming assets now. It's been used for a long time and on all types of productions, some of them that you might already know as Rick and Morty on television, The Simpsons, feature film. There was a really good feature film that was done in it lately, which is called Avril et un monde truqué, April in a Trick World, I think in English. That's one that won the Crystal at the MIFA festival this year. So it's really can be used to create all types of animation, whether it's drawing on paper, traditional, or paperless, traditional, drawing in the software, or doing cutout animation where you will be building a rig or a puppet in the software and you will be animating each individual part of the character to create the animation. This is the type of animation I'll be focusing on today, cutout animation, and I'll be showing you how you can create cutout animation and export this to be used in Unity or in any other game engine. But for the specific Unity game engine, we have a middleware, a plugin that's available on the Unity Asset Store that you can download for free that allows you to load the animation that you create in Harmony. So let me start by starting Harmony. Just click OK. I'll be using Harmony Premium, but you can use Harmony Essentials or Harmony Advanced to do assets for games. It's pretty much the same. You don't have access to the node view if you're using Advanced or Essentials. I won't be using the node view today. But apart from that, it's pretty much the same. So the first thing you want to do is you want to create your project. So I'll just create a demo scene here for the gaming demo. And when I create the scene, the important thing here is the resolution or the camera size. So I will select a square camera. So we have created a template here called Game 512. This creates a camera of 512 by 512, so the camera is square. It doesn't really matter the amount of pixels, the amount of units that you give this camera, because we don't use this resolution to export the assets out of Harmony. We rather use something else that I'll show you later on. But make it square, because when you export to Unity, everything that you load in Unity is square, so it makes it easier to plan where you will be drawing your assets inside Harmony. Here I have a frame rate of 30 frames per second. This is a standard rate when you're creating games. I'll click and I'll create the scene. So Harmony, for those that are not too familiar with it, comes with a full range of drawing tools, whether they're vector drawing tools. So I've got vector drawing tools here. And while I start drawing, let me tell you, I am not an artist. I'm not very good at drawing. So I won't be drawing a lot. And when I draw, just bear with me. I'll try to do the best that I can. So we have vector drawing tools like the brush tool here. And you can see that if I zoom in on this, it's absolutely crisp. It's not a bitmap. It's always crisp. So I can select this with my select tool, and I can easily reshape this, scale this up, scale this down, and I will never lose any quality because this is a vector, right? It's not a bitmap. It also makes it very easy to select individual portions of my drawing. Let me make my tree a little bigger like that. So I can select individual strokes here to resize them, move them, or rotate them. I can also select whatever I have drawn and change its color by just clicking another color in my palette here, or by just selecting the color it was painted with and modifying the color values right here. So every stroke that was painted using that color will get modified automatically. So there's a lot of advantages of using the vector drawing tools inside Harmony, mostly because it's a lot more flexible and you don't lose any quality, and you can export after that at any resolution you want, and you always will get a very sharp line. You also have access to some interesting tool like the cutter that can be used to quickly clean up your drawing by just making strokes like this over your drawing. But if you'd rather use bitmap tools, we also have those tools. So to be able to draw using the bitmap tools, I'll click here, I'll add a layer, add a drawing layer, and I'll select this, I'll click on the bitmap artwork here before creating a layer. So when I create a bitmap layer here, I can see that I don't have access to the same tools anymore. So I don't have access to my contour editor anymore. I don't have access to my pencil tool, but I still have access to my brush tool. And this really gives me access to a lot more different brush types, a lot more creative brush types. So if you want to create something that looks a little bit more artistic, you can use the brush tool, the bitmap brush tools, to do that. Usually the bitmap brush will be used to create maybe your sketches. So when you're sketching, you might want to create the bitmap. So if I zoom in on it, you can see this is really a raster image. So the bitmap tools will sometimes be used to do your sketches, and then you'll do the clean version of your drawing using the vector tools, or it can also be used for creating your backgrounds. So your backgrounds won't be animated inside Unity. You won't be animating them inside Harmony either. So just creating them in bitmap allows you to have a lot more artistic expression in your drawing. So you can create either vector or bitmap layers, it doesn't matter. Everything will be exported to Unity. So I won't go into details about all the drawing tools that we have in the software, and I'll go and I'll show you how you can actually rig something or animate something. So let's say I add a drawing layer again. I'll just name this ball. And just to show you how easy it is to animate something, I'll just draw a ball right here in the middle. I'll try to make it round. I'll fill it with color like this. It's a very pretty ball. It looks like Christmas. I'll just change this to be black. There we go. And now this ball is just exposed on the first frame of my scene. So if I go farther in my scene, it's not exposed at all. So I'll just go to the last frame and I'll press F5 to extend the exposure. Now this is exposed for the whole scene. And now I can just select this, and using keyframes like this, I can animate my ball very easily. And now you can see how the ball is going up and down. I won't do a full animation cycle, but this is really how you can see that I can animate something inside Harmony. If I'm animating a ball, I usually will animate using a 3D path, but here I'm using a separate path. So it's really easy to animate things inside the Harmony using just the transform tool and selecting the layer you want to animate. Now let me show you how you can create a hierarchy. So if you want to create a character that will be a cutout character that you will use for exporting to the Unity game engine, you will need to create a hierarchy. So I'll pick some drawings here. So this is 3 drawing layers: the hand, the forearm, and the arm. And they're just siblings here in the timeline, so I can select them and move them, and they're not tied together. Now I want to create a hierarchy out of this, so it's really easy. From my timeline, I'll select the hand, and I'll drag the hand on the forearm right here. And then I'll select the upper arm, not the upper arm, sorry, the forearm, and I'll drag the forearm up on the upper arm. So now I have a hierarchy here. You can see that when I select the upper arm, the full arm is selected. When I select the forearm, I have the hand selected and just the hand. Though you can see there's a little problem here. I have not the right compositing order. That's because when I do parent-child hierarchies here, whatever is below is always composited before, and what is on top is composited after, which makes them appear above. So what I will need to do to continue animating is I'll need to change the compositing order of these. And I cannot do this from my timeline, because if I do this, I will change the hierarchy. But what I will do is I will move this on the z-axis. So using my transform tool, if I select the hand, and I press and hold the Alt key and press the down key on my keyboard, this moves the hand forward. If I press Alt and up, this moves the hand backward. So I move it forward, so it's now displayed above the forearm, and I'll do the same thing for the forearm, and I'll move this in front of my upper arm. So now I have my nice looking hand, arm, and I can animate it. So I can animate the hand like this. I can rotate the forearm as well, and the hand will follow, and I can rotate the upper arm, and you can see it's a full hierarchy. So that's the simple way to create a cutout character in Harmony if you just want to use a normal cutout animation. So if you're exporting to game engines that don't support bone deformers, like I'll be showing you later, this is what you'll need to use to be able to animate your character. But if you're using our middleware for Unity, you'll be able to use deformers that will deform your drawings, and you won't have to create those joints. Now, before I continue on, one thing you need to make sure when you're drawing is that you're always drawing either on the line art or on the color art. So if I go in my drawing view here to quickly show you what this is that in Harmony, since Harmony is used for animation for TV and for films, there's a lot of effects you can do on your drawings, and sometimes it's very useful to have your color art and your line art drawn on separate layers inside that one drawing. And there's no problem if you do that when you're working when you're creating assets for a game. But just remember to never use the overlay or the underlay layers, art layers. These art layers are not available in Essentials, so there's no problem. You won't accidentally draw on those, but they're available in Harmony Advanced and Harmony Premium. Though they are not turned on by default, I turned these on before starting the webinar here to be able to see them. There's one use for them in the gaming pipeline, which I'll be showing you a little bit later. So if you're using Essentials, you won't be able to do what I'll be showing you later. All right, so now if you want to have access to the overlay and the underlay, you need to go into the preferences. And at the same time, I'll show you a couple of other preferences that are key to set when you are working to create assets for the gaming. Because one thing as well you need to remember is that if you want to add transformation or position offset to a layer, you need to make sure you're using a separate path and not a 3D path, like this is the case here. You can use a 3D path, that will work, but the rendering or the game engine, this will be heavier for the game engine to calculate. So you want to be using separate path and not 3D path for your layers. So this one was not properly set up. Now I'm set to use a separate path instead of 3D path. And the type of curves that I want to use are Bezier curves, but that's the default. So if I start animating this, you'll see it will create a Bezier curve for my animation. So you don't have to worry about that. But I'll show you the that you need to change to be able to make sure that you always create separate path and not 3D path. So if you go into your preferences, on the Mac, it's under Harmony, Harmony Premium or Harmony Essentials or Advanced, and Preferences. On Windows, it's under Edit, Preferences. And if I go on the General tab, let me reset all my defaults right here. If I go on the General tab here, what you want to do is you want to click the default separate position for pegs. So make sure you select that so that whenever you create a peg, it doesn't use a 3D path, it uses separate positions. You also want to make sure that default separate position for elements is checked so that whenever you add an element, this is selected by default. Now, while I'm in the preferences, another preference that I really like to enable myself is the focus on mouse enter, so that wherever I move my mouse inside Harmony, the focus follows. The other thing I wanted to show you in the preferences is the support for overlay and underlay arts. So if you want to be able to see the overlay and the underlay, you need to enable that preference in the preferences right there. And I'll just make sure to enable the anti-aliasing before I go. And there we go. So now anytime I will create a layer like this, the layer will be properly set to separate and not to 3D path. So that's something you need to keep in mind when you're creating assets for games. Now, I don't want to use a normal hierarchy. I want to use a deformer chain here instead of some game bones to deform my arm rather than using the standard cutout. So to create my my game bone structure, I will select my rigging tool here. When I select the rigging tool, I'll go into my tool properties and I'll make sure I select the game bone mode here. So if I don't select this game bone mode here, I will be creating maybe normal bones which do not render exactly the same inside Unity, or I might be adding curves which are not rendered in Unity. You have to remember that Harmony is a very powerful animation software. It has a lot of effects that you can do inside the software. But when you're talking about a game engine, the game engine is a lot more limited. It doesn't have the power available like the software can have. So a lot of effects cannot be rendered inside those game engine. For example, the curve would not be able to be rendered in real time efficiently in a game engine, so that's why we don't have it. So now I want to create my bone, so I have my rigging tool, and I'll just select my drawing here, and I'll just click with my rigging tool where I want to have my pivots. So this will create the articulations for my drawings. And once I'm done, I can change the size of the articulation if I want, make it bigger or smaller, like that. And then if I go back to my transform tool, I'll be I'll be able to easily bend those different drawings right there like that. And this is a game bone, and I'm able to stretch them if I want to, very short or very long. So this is how simple it is to create a bone structure on drawings inside Harmony. Now, I won't rig a full character here, so I'll go and I'll open a character that has already been rigged. And I'll use the Wishling character right here. So the Wishling character was a character that was created for a game that we have developed here at Toon Boom with the help of some friends of ours. So we have Ben Halstead and Christina that have worked on the artwork for this game. These are the ones that designed and animated the different animation cycles for these characters. And we had a game developer making the game here in Montreal. So this is the idle cycle for Wishling. If I select the whole character just to show you the bone structure, I click on the Show Bones Here button, I'll see that the whole character here is built using bones. So I'm able to bend all the parts of his body. And if we take a closer look, let's say at the ear here, we've created a very big articulation on the ear to be able to have the ear bend like this. So it has flexible ears so that when he's walking, the ears go up and down. Another thing we have done is, like, for example, if I look at the arm here, the arm has a couple of bones here, and I'm able to stretch those bones, and the hand is also attached to those bones, and I can stretch the hands if I want to. But sometimes you don't want to have your drawings being affected by the bone. You want them to follow, but you don't want them to be affected. So for example, the head, I want the head to follow the neck, but I don't want the head to be deformed by the bone. So if I stretch the bone here, you can see that this does not affect the head at all. So how do we do that is that we're using a model, a layer called the kinematic output. So if I go inside my timeline right here, where I have the head, just above the head I have a kinematic output. So what this does is it gives the position to the drawing, but it doesn't deform the drawing. So it's very useful for the head, for example, to be able to move the head, but don't have the head deformed by the game bone. Another technique we've used in this character is masks or cutters. So you can use masks or cutters if you're working with Harmony and the plugin that we've developed for Unity. But you can only use one level of cutter. So this means you cannot use a cutter inside a cutter. So the cutter here allows us to select the eye, the pupil, and move it inside the eye and never have it bleed outside of the eye, or take the eye here and close the eye and have the pupil that doesn't get squashed at all, but gets hidden by whatever I scale the eye on. So this is really useful. These are things that if you're not using our plugins inside Unity, the bones and the cutters, you won't be able to use them inside Harmony. But if you use our plugin, you will be able to render those once you're in Unity. So once you have created your rig and your animation, the next step will be to export this to Unity. We have two scripts actually to export to game engines, one for Unity and one for Easel.js. One of them will export a skeleton and will export a sprite sheet with all the different pieces of my puppet. This is the one I will be using for Unity. The other one is exports the full animation cycle. So if I have some special effect that I've used, or if it's a very small character and has a very simple animation cycle, I might not want to export the full skeleton. I just want to export the animation cycle completely. I can export a sprite sheet of the full animation cycle. But for Unity today, I'll be using the one that exports the skeleton. So before I click on this button, this is here my gaming toolbar. So if you have Harmony 12.2, you'll have access to this gaming toolbar here. This gaming toolbar contains 4 buttons: set anchor, set properties or set prop, export, and 2 scripts to export. Now these 2 options are new in Harmony 12.2 that was just released yesterday. And if you want to get more information about that release, you can go on our blog, blog.tomoom.com, and click on the top blog here, and you'll have a little bit more information about this release that we did just yesterday. So it has some interesting new features for the gaming pipeline. The biggest one is the ability to tag layers and put metadata on layers before exporting to Unity. So now I'll be exporting this to Unity. So I'll use the script here, export to sprite sheet. When I click on this button here, I have at the top the location where I want to export my assets. So I want to export my assets inside my Unity project. So I've already created a Unity project. It's called Unity 12.2 0092. And inside my Unity project, I want to export inside the assets folder, the streaming assets, and Harmony resources. If I look in Harmony resources, I have already some folders here. I don't want to go inside one of those folders. This is where I want to be exporting. The next thing is I'll be naming the asset that I want to export. So this will be the Wishling demo. So this will create a folder called Wishling demo inside the Harmony resources of my Unity project. And I don't have any existing clip because this is the first export that I'll do. I don't have to worry about overwriting an existing project or clearing the texture file. Actually, maybe I want to clear the textures because I've probably made some exports before, and I want to make sure I'm just clearing the texture. But if I'm doing modification to my skeleton, to my rig, I will want to overwrite the project because I need to export the new skeleton. The next thing is the unit scale. So this is the scale of the Harmony units at what they will be inside Unity. So for now, it's 1:1. So one field in animation, we use fields for our main units. One field in Harmony will be equivalent to 1 unit inside Unity. If I lower this or make this bigger, let's say I say 2, it will be 1 field inside Harmony will be equal to 2 units inside Unity. For now, I'll just use it as a scale of 1. The next value here is the sprite sheet resolution. So when you export a skeleton like this, it will create a sprite sheet and place all the parts on the sprite sheet. And this is the maximum size that my sprite sheet will have. The sprite sheet will expand in power of 2, so it will start at 2, and then go to 4, and then go to 8, and then go to 16, 32, and expand in power of 2. Because the sprite sheet size, you always want it to be divisible in 2. I have an option here, reuse frames. This is my first export, so it doesn't really matter. But what this does is that if it finds, let's say I export another animation cycle from this character, and it compares the drawing between the 2 exports, and it looks at what's the difference between those drawings. And if the difference is less than 2%, it will reuse the same drawings. It will not export new drawings to your sprite sheet. So you want to optimize your sprite sheet. You don't want to have too many drawings. So this is important to be selected. And the next values here are the different sprite sheets. So in one export, I can export multiple sprite sheets of different resolution. So here I'll be exporting a sprite sheet for the iPad with a width of 1024 pixels. And I'll be also exporting a sprite sheet for the iPhone, which is a smaller resolution. And at the bottom here, I have pre-calculated curves. So this, if I select this, all my animation curve, my Bezier curves, will be baked or will be pre-calculated, which means that it will have a keyframe at every frame to specify what is the value at each frame in my scene. If I don't select this, let's say I have a keyframe at frame 1 and a keyframe at frame 10, it will just export the Bezier as is, and it will let the game engine calculate the values for that. So depending on the type of assets you're exporting, sometimes you want to pre-calculate curve, sometimes you don't want. I usually don't pre-calculate the curves. Then I click export. And when I click export, it generates two things. Well, it generates a couple of things, but it generates some XML files and it generates the sprite sheet. So let's go here inside my Unity 92 project, inside my assets, my streaming assets, Harmony resources, and the Wishling demo. So in the Wishling demo, you can see I have all the XML files. These files are the files that contain the skeleton. So the skeleton.xml contains a hierarchy of my puppet. The animation contains all the information of the animation that my character has in this scene. The drawing animation contains the drawing animation. So if I'm swapping drawings, which I haven't shown you yet, this will be specified in that XML file here. I have the sprite sheet.xml. This one tells the software or the plugin where to find each individual part in the sprite sheet. And the stage one lists all the different cycles that I have exported. So far, I have exported only one cycle. So there's only one cycle in there. But if I had more, I would see them more. So if I go to sprite sheet here, I have two sprite sheets, one for iPad and one for iPhone that has smaller drawings on it. So if you look at the bigger one, you can see all the individual parts from my character have been exported as sprites in my sprite sheet. So these drawings will be reused inside Unity to animate the character using the skeleton. So once I have exported this, I'm ready to load this inside Unity. So I'll start Unity right here. I'll open my project. And now I'm in an empty scene. I want to import this data inside Unity. So we have created in our middleware some components, some gaming objects actually, that contain all the, that are already set up to be able to read and display the assets. So I'll go either in the game object menu, select Harmony, Harmony texture object, or I'll go to my hierarchy panel here. I'll right click, select Harmony, Harmony texture object. And when I click on this, this opens a browser that lets me browse for my assets. So I'll go inside Assets, Streaming Assets, Harmony Resources, and I want to load the Wishling demo. Select Choose. The first question it asks me after that is, do I want to create a camera? Because it needs to have a Harmony camera to be able to display the information inside Unity. So I'll create the Harmony camera, and I'll select I have only one camera here, and I'll select the main camera as my main camera right there. And now if you look inside Unity, I see my character. I don't see the animation yet because I don't have any scripts loaded inside my my project. I'll just select my my Wishling demo here. I'll just lower the discretization here to make the bone deformers look better. And now I want to be able to see the animation, so I'll add a component to that. So I'll click Component here at the bottom. I'll go inside Harmony submenu, Utils, and select the Loop 1 script. And now if I play this back, you'll see that I now see my animation being looped inside my game preview. I'll stop this. Now I'm a little bit too close here. I can move my camera a little bit backwards using the manipulator here, so I want to see a little bit more of my character, like that. That's not very convenient. So if you want to take a closer look at your character and you want to be able to move the camera as the animation is playing, you can actually add a pan and zoom camera here. So I'll create a blank object here, create empty. I'll rename this. The name doesn't really matter, but I'll rename this to, hold on, there we go. Rename this to pan zoom. There we go. And I'll add a component to this, Harmony, utils, pan camera. And when I add this script, there's an attach camera field here, and I'll just need to take my camera, link that to here, and now when I play back my scene, I'll be able to move around and zoom in and zoom out. So if you want to take a closer look at your character, this makes it really easy to do. Now let's say I've created my character, but I realize I need to change the color. It's really easy to do. You just go back to Harmony, and you change the color. So let's say I need to change the color. I go in my color view here, I select my color palette, and I change the color of my character to green, like that. Maybe I also want to add some drawings, modify some drawings here. So I want to add some spikes, some claws on his fingers. So he has some claws here. He thinks it's Wolverine. There we go. Now if I look at this, like that, this is now how it looks. I'll save my scene. It's really important to save the scene because when you're using the export script, it doesn't read the drawings from Harmony, but it actually goes and reads the drawings directly from the file system. So if you haven't saved, it won't be able to load those drawings. So I'll export. I'll make sure I will clear the texture folder because I've made some modification to my drawings, and I'll export this again. So this will replace the sprite sheet. So if I go here in my sprite sheet folder, you can see the timestamp has been updated, and I see the new drawings, the new colors, and I see the claws right there. So if I go back to Unity, I play this back. There we go. After one playback, it refreshes all the assets, and you now see that my character is yellow. What other things can you do? Not yellow, I mean green. What are the other things you can do using our Harmony render script inside Unity? So right now I have only one animation cycle. I'll show you another scene with more animation cycle. But this would be here that you would be able to specify which animation cycle you want to load. And if you want to load more, you can change the size to have more than one element here. I've got the discretization step. So that's how much triangles will be created to deform my drawings using the bones. Then I've got my render target. So when I am working inside Unity and I want to be able to preview here inside my scene view, my artwork, I need to have the render texture selected. This actually does a double render. It renders once into a texture and it displays it inside Unity. And if you're publishing your game, your assets, you don't want to be using that because it's a little bit of overhead rendering twice. You want to use the E-screen, the screen renderer. When you do that, I'll still able to see my character here, but I'm not able to see it in my scene anymore. So just remember, and when you're working inside Unity, you can use the render texture, but before exporting or publishing, just change to screen to optimize your character. Another thing that we have are colliders. So now I don't have any colliders set. I'll go to Always and I'll select the simplest collider, which is the box. I'll play back my scene here. And now you can see I have a box collider drawn around my character. So this is the most efficient collider, but it's not the one that is the most precise. We have other colliders. We have the convex hull colliders, which is a little bit more complex, but still not the most complex. So if you're doing a game that has a lot of, maybe a fighting game, this will not be precise enough. So we have another type of colliders, which is the polygon colliders. So this is the more complex ones. And you probably don't want to set that to all your characters in your scene, in your game, because this is more, takes more power to calculate, to generate, but it's a lot more precise. Other things you can do is you can change the frame rate. So if I need to look at my animation at a lower frame rate, I can just change the frame rate in my loop script, and I'll be able to see it at a lower frame rate. I'll put this back to 30. Actually, it was 24. It should have been 30 there. And other things you can do is that also you can cast some light on your character. I don't have a... So instead of setting all of this here in this scene, I'll go and I'll load a different one to show you. So I'll just save this scene here. I'll save this scene inside. Right here. Oops. Inside assets and Harmony SDKs and scene. And this is my green wishling. I just want to keep this for later reference. So I'm going to show you another scene here that we have right here. There we go. This is called the lighting one. So which I have 4 copies of my wishling characters, and all of them have different types of lights applied to them. So I've got the wishling lit, which is the one on the left. And if I select my point light here and I manipulate my point light, you can see that when I move the point light, my character on the left is affected by the light. The second character is also affected by the light, but it's also casting a shadow on the plane that's just below. The 2 other version of my character is unlit, so this one is not affected at all by my light. And the last one is unlit, but it's casting a shadow. You can actually see it's casting a shadow on the 3D geometry that's behind. So if I play this scene here, and I move my light, I cannot move my light, I'm too close. Zoom out a little bit. There we go. If I move the light, you can see that the shadow is being cast on the 3D cubes that are just behind. So these are the different types of render of shaders that are available. And to be able to change those with the Harmony component selected, if I look in the shader menu here, this is where I'm able to change from the different shaders that we have accessible to us. Now, something that's new inside Harmony 12.2 is the possibility to add metadata to your assets before exporting them out of Harmony to be loaded in Unity. So if I go back to Harmony Premium here, and I select my hand here, and I can use this metadata to let's say, to define anchors and props inside my scene. So what I've done on this character, if we look in my timeline here, is I've drawn a layer called club and a layer called anchor, hand right anchor. I've disabled them. I'll enable them now. And you can see I've made my best attempt by drawing a club, and I've attached this to my kinematic output that is just below the game bone from my hand. It's important to have a kinematic output before your anchor and before your prop, because if you don't, then your anchor will be deformed by the deformer and might not follow properly. So I've created normal animation layers, and what I've done is I've used the different scripts here. So let me just click those to put them back to normal. So what I've done on the hand here, on the anchor actually, is I've drawn a little cross here to tell me where the anchor is. And after I've drawn this, I took my rotation tool and I made sure that, actually I didn't, I forgot to do that. I make sure I move the anchor point to the proper position right here. So to move the pivot point, you need to use the Advanced Animation toolbar. The Advanced Animation toolbar might not be in your workspace by default. If it's not there, just go into Windows menu, select Toolbars, Advanced Animation. This will make the animation toolbar appear. Or you can also right-click any toolbar and just click Advanced Animation Toolbar. So then I'm able to move the pivot. So the pivot will be the anchor point that you will have. Now, if we look at that anchor point here, or that anchor layer inside my drawing view, you'll see that I drew my X here on the overlay. The reason that I did that is because I don't want this to be exported when I export to Unity. So I'm able to see it in Harmony, but when I export to Unity, it's not getting rendered. Only what's on the line art and the color art are being rendered. And then I drew the club on the line art layer. So now I'm ready to export this again. So I'll export this to Unity. And oh, before I export, something very important I must mention is that so far I've only been showing you one animation cycle, but you'll be creating all your animation cycles for a character using the same rig, the same puppet. So if you add an anchor to one puppet, or to your puppet, you need to make sure that all the animation cycles are built the same way. So you need to really define all the anchors before you start doing the animation. And the different animation cycles will be created in different versions of the scene, which I can show you just after. So now I will be overwriting the Wishling anchor. I will overwrite the project and I will clear the texture folder to make sure that I get all my new drawings. I click on the export button here. Oh, and before I do that, sorry, I forgot one very important thing. So my club and my anchor, they need to be defined as an anchor point and a property, a prop. So my anchor layer, I will go in my gaming toolbar and I'll select the anchor here. This sets some metadata on my layer. So to be able to see the metadata, I can open the metadata editor right here. And I can see now that my layer, so when I select the anchor layer, I see I have some metadata, game.isAnchor. So anything that you want to define as an anchor, you need to add this metadata to it. It needs to be written in the same way. But we have provided some scripts to be able to do that automatically for you. So now I'll select the club and I'll click on the little sword here, and this will enable the prop metadata on that layer. You'll also see that when I set the metadata, it also changes the color of the layer. So this is really practical for you to see in the timeline which layers are props and which layers are anchors. And this is all set through those. So now I'm ready. I'll save my scene and I'll export this again to Unity. It will generate a new XML, a new skeleton with my anchor, and it will generate new sprite sheets that will contain the club. So I go here to my sprite sheet. There we go. Actually, yeah, so I have my sprite sheet for the club and my sprite sheet for the rest of my character. So now I want to go inside Unity, and actually I'll just, now if I can just reload this. There we go. Or if actually I will need to re-import the whole thing. So I will click on Harmony texture object, and I'll go and I'll browse for my streaming assets, Wishling anchor, which is not the one. Which is the one? How did I call it again? Wishling demo. There we go. Harmony texture object, Harmony resources, Wishling demo. I select this. And now you can see I have a little arrow here to uncollapse a hierarchy under my character. And I have my club and my anchor. So play club is my prop, the club, and the anchor here is my anchor. So if I want to put the club inside his hand, I will need to drag it and drop it here. Now you'll see that my club, I don't see the whole club here. It's because after I've attached something to my character, I just need to regenerate my mesh. So right here, if I click regenerate mesh, now I see the whole club. And if I play back the animation, well, to play back the animation for sure, I need to add the Harmony util and loop script. Now you can see the club is following. So now you can interactively attach things to anchors to your character, and you can animate this inside your game engine using the metadata. You can also add other types of metadata if you want to define the hit points for the club. You can define a metadata for that. The only important thing is that when you're creating metadata to be exported in the game engine, you need to name it game.something. So in this case, it's game is prop, but it could be game hit point club. And then you define the value of that club. So that's pretty much it for how to create your assets and how to export them into Unity. For sure, if you want to use the Unity middleware that we have created, you need to import it from the asset store. So inside Unity, you can go in the asset store. And in the asset store, you just go on the search field and you type Harmony, Harmony right there, press enter. And now you can see Harmony Game SDK. And this is totally free, so you just, oh, there's an update. You can just click import or update, and this will download it to your project, and you will be able to import it in your project. So I hope this was helpful. Now I'll just look for Fred and say, is there any questions that you guys have on anything I've shown in this quick session? What about it?
Okay, hello everyone. So
we got a question here. Can animation of character blend Unity? Okay. So pretty much the way we proceed in the case of the wishing, when we made all the clips of animation, we did all the blending animation inside Harmony. So we did those intermediate animation. So when we pass from, for example, from the jump to the walk cycle and all those stuff. So we made all those different clips and export them. And what happened is using the script we developed, that we provide some. If you go in the util folder, you will find some scripts. You can define which clip you want to play at which time. So you can say when you're about to jump, run the in-between animation for the jumps, from passing from the wall, for whatever was the last action. So that's how we do it pretty much. Any other question? Yes. Okay, so will the lighting node work from Harmony to Unity?
So the lighting, I'm guessing you're talking about the light shading inside the Harmony. If you're using the light shading inside Harmony, this is not something that Unity supports. So it cannot be exported directly out of Harmony into Unity. If you want to be able to use that, if you export a full sprite sheet for your animation, so the full animation of your character instead of exporting a skeleton, you will be able to get the effect rendered on the sprites. But if you're exporting a skeleton like that, you won't be able to use the lighting from Harmony to Unity.
Okay, so any other question? Yes. So it should be baked before export, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So here you can see a very bad version of my club, which I put on another animation of the character. So when you're creating all the different animation for your characters, you always need to create those animation using the same skeleton. And the way you create a different animation is that you save your scene as a different version. So each of my animation cycle is a different version of my scene. It's not a new scene totally, it's just a new version of the scene. So it's reusing the same drawings from one scene to another. And it's also, you need to make sure that when you're creating a new scene version, you don't modify the hierarchy, you always keep the same hierarchy as you defined the first time. You can create new drawings if you want inside each different version of the scenes, and you can swap very easily from those drawings at any point in your animation to the drawing that you want. Like he's holding the club, right down, like this, opening his hand, like that. So you don't have to use all the drawings inside every version, but if you add a new drawing to a version, it will be exported when you export your sprite sheet.
Another question, another good one actually. Can we swap inside Unity? So for now,
the thing you can swap are the props.
The props.
So let's say you have, I have my character here. I was in Unity, and he had the prop. Actually, I can swap the prop on and off if I want to. And actually, I can draw also different version of the prop and on different frames inside my Harmony scene. And inside Unity, what I tell the software to do is to load frame 1 of the prop or frame 2 of the prop. So you can load and unload all the different things. One thing we have done is we've created a character, hold on, which has a lot of props. Right here in my Harmony scenes. It's called Zilke, right there. So this character is just a black character. It's all drawn in black. And we've placed a lot of anchors on the character everywhere on his body. And we've drawn all different types of props. And once you export this to Unity, you're able to swap to define which prop you want where, and if do you want the frame 1 of the prop or do you want frame 2 of the prop. So you can switch the whole costume of the character interactively inside the Unity game engine.
Another question is, what if I want to swap the N inside Unity? Is that possible, or would I have to turn an N to a prop?
Yes, basically yes. So for now, it's not possible to swap anything on the skeleton, the animation, once it's exported out of Harmony. But you're able to swap props. So if your hand is a prop, you'll be able to change the hand inside Unity.
Okay. Any other question?
Using symbols, I'm guessing you're referring to symbols as in Flash. We don't really use symbols inside Harmony because we don't need to use symbols. And you use symbols inside Flash to build hierarchy and to be able to have access to different drawings on a layer. The data structure inside Harmony allows you to create hierarchies without creating symbols, and it allows you to swap from one drawing to another without using symbols. Though it also means that we have symbols inside Harmony, but we don't have we don't really use them because we don't have any use for them. And if you want to use a symbol as a movie clip, no, that's not really possible inside Harmony, but you do everything directly in the timeline. So this makes the animation a lot simpler to do inside Harmony.
Okay, so
any other question? Anything you want to know specifically about the gaming pipeline? Yes. So your last question. Okay. Okay. If you import the animation with bones from Harmony into Unity, can you animate the bones in Unity?
No.
Pretty much, yeah. The straight answer for that is no. Everything you see into Unity is being done by the render that we're using. So what we made pretty much with the plugin, the SDK plugin, it's make sure that we can render all the export that we do with the XML file, the spreadsheet, and everything inside Unity. And that renders using some of our function that we have inside Harmony that usually does a transformation in all. It's like a port of what we're doing to Harmony inside Unity. So we don't have direct interaction with the rig, except when it comes to the props right now. So that's the first step we came with. So having like at least the possibility to remove pieces of your character and stuff like that. But if you want to interact with the specific pieces like let's say Spine will do, that's not something we're doing right now. But that's definitely in the plans.
Now, one important thing that I need to mention before we finish this webinar is that everything I've shown you now, when I export from Harmony to Unity, I've exported using XML data. XML data is great because it's human readable. You can open it in a text editor and you can read it. So if you need to debug something or to understand how the structure works, it's really easy to see. But once you start creating your actual game, you don't want to be using XML anymore because XML takes longer to read. You want to use binaries. So you need to convert the XMLs to binary file. And in our SDK, there's a utility called XML to binary or XML to bin that you run on a command line, and that will convert your XMLs to binary files, and that will make the loading a lot faster inside the game engine.
Okay, I got another question here.
Is there a pipeline procedure to develop a game from Harmony assets to Unity? Actually, it's a big part of the documentation that's coming with 12.2. We're going to add those tips, so how to proceed. So you go into the documentation, we have a chapter specifically about gaming, and we cover those points. We cover also how to use the exporter. Everything that Marc-André talked about in this webinar is contained inside that documentation too. And of course, you can always come back to this webinar if you have any other question. It will be on the website in around, I would say, 24, 48 hours from now. So you can come back at any time and review this webinar with all the tips that Marc-André gave. Anything else that maybe someone to know? Last question. Where the website? Yeah, actually, in the website it will be in the same page for the webinar. It will be exactly in the same page where you register. So tomoon.com/webinar, and at the end of this webinar, it will say coming soon. But look for that button. Soon it will transform to a login, and you will be able, if you have a user account on our website, to see that webinar and play it as a video. We have
so right here we have the previously recorded webinar section, and so all the previous webinar, they're recorded and they're posted there a couple of hours or a day after the actual webinar.
Yeah. And one last thing, I think it's a good question that I got here. So yes, the SDK from Unity, it's required, of course, if you want to play back all your animation that you export. And this is also how you get the menu that Marc-André showed in Unity, where you can do and import an Harmony texture render. So that's pretty much what brings all of that. So the only thing you have to do is, as soon you download the SDK from the asset store, it will ask you to import pretty much all the content of it into your Unity game project. And then from there, you simply have to use the Harmony menu and either add a screen object or a render texture object that you will see also in the scene view. So I think we covered everything. We thanks everyone for being here today. That was a pleasure to share this webinar. And stay posted. We're going to have this webinar available for you on the website pretty soon. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody, for listening. And I hope to, well, not see you, but
talk to you again.
Give you another webinar pretty soon. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.